This isn't something that I had originally planned to include in this sermon. It's not a secret, but I choose carefully who I disclose this part of my story with. I chose to share this with you for two reasons. First, it's important. The passage of SESTA, a recent law supposedly targeting just sex traffickers, but actually targeting all sex workers, has already wreaked havoc on the lives of tens of thousands of consensual sex workers in this country, closing down safer avenues of trade and forcing them into dangerous ones in order to make ends meet. I've watched a number of my friends go from relative stability to utter precarity in the space of 1 week. And second, this is something I'm sharing not because I have to, but because I feel like I can. This church has been a safe and welcoming place for me, a sanctuary that I came to in a time of distress and has since become my spiritual home. We like to say that this is a church where you can bring your whole self. And today, the Spirit is calling me to share a tender part of myself that I don't often share. The night before choosing this reading, I was at a friend's place. We were sitting in her bed, talking and listening to music. And according to her, the last thing I said before falling asleep, sitting upright in mid-conversation was, "I feel so safe." As cute and silly a moment as it was, it reminded me what it was to feel so safe that I could just drop all of my concerns and worries and just fall asleep right there. I don't often feel that. That's why this psalm strikes me so hard. The psalmist's emphasis on sleep, faith, and safety touched deeply on my own faith walk. My initial reading of this psalm struck me like a tuning fork. The psalmist's exhortation to ponder it on my bed and be silent when I am disturbed seems directly in conflict with lying down and sleeping peacefully. After all, what good does it do you to lie awake at night, worrying? What allows you to sleep peacefully when you're in distress? For me, lifting up my worries to God in prayer can give me the room that I need to rest. But when it's too much, and when I'm too lost in it, I find that God shows up in my friends and my family and gives me that room that I need when I'm in distress. The most striking example of God showing up for me in this way was when I had just moved to the Bay Area. In early 2011, I arrived in San Francisco after the most hopeful and most grueling year of my life. I had just started gender transition, and the promise of living as a real human being, one that I could love and respect, was just coming into view. I was not there yet. A lifetime of unaddressed self-loathing left me with no self-confidence and no ability to advocate for myself. I had spent the first year in an uncomfortable in-between space, getting pelted with rejection, mostly by prospective employers. I lost one housing arrangement after another and came to San Francisco through a serendipitous last-ditch opportunity. After a sleepless 15-hour train ride and a harrowing drive from the train station, I arrived at my new home, the Big Gay Warehouse, a ramshackle old warehouse in the Bayview, a microcosm of the new community I would find myself a part of, a motley assortment of scrappy queer trans folk that had fallen off the edge of whatever other communities they had been a part of. We were the weird kids, high-tech, mentally ill, homeless trans kids washing up in the big city, oddball visual artists cutting together experimental movies from dumpstered film, glam kids building their own thrift stores. We were a community space for a community with no space. We held all ages queer dance parties that didn't revolve around drinking, film nights where we played things no self-respecting theater would play, queer punk shows. It was sanctuary beyond anything that I had ever dreamed. We became friends through shared habitation and family through shared endeavor. Hand in hand with those dreams that we were building was the reality that we were desperately poor. On the economic spectrum, we ranged from working broke to utterly destitute. We ate off of food stamps and dumpster diving. We sometimes would share our food stamp cards to, pay off small debts and whatnot. And for the person that was stocking up that day. Our projects and events were funded by occasional donations, underpaying service jobs, odd gigs, selling things on Craigslist. We built out the space with salvaged materials, but we were family. We were a queer family, and we made it work. I lived at the big gay warehouse for about 4 months until we were evicted. Like most warehouse tenants, we had none of the legal protections that apply to conventional housing arrangements. Our sanctuary had been taken away. I alternated between staying with my future husband 3 or 4 nights a week, taking care not to spend too much time lest I, put too much of my burden on him. I spent other nights with friends and lovers. I slept in a storage unit, and I squatted houses. During the day, I would stop by drop-in centers to rest, eat, and use the bathroom and Wi-Fi. I filled out countless job applications, and the few interviews I got all ended with a "we'll call you." I was stuck. I felt like no matter how many resume clinics or job fairs I went to, I would never get something that led out of this situation. I was constantly hungry and exhausted from eating and sleeping badly. Just meeting my daily needs took all of my effort most days. With each passing day, faith became harder and harder to hold on to. Frustration turned into despondency. Despondency turned into anger and cynicism. Sex work was something that was just kind of atmospheric in that community. Maybe half of my friends at the time were doing some variety of sex work, mostly on a survival basis. And I'd had some reservations about it, but I figured I would give it a try. I figured I didn't really have anything to lose at that point. My future husband told me he'd support me no matter what choice I made. I asked a few of my sex worker friends for guidance and advice and put up an ad on a site where I could find clients. My friends and I kept tabs on each other when we went out to work. We shared information on potentially dangerous clients. We shared leads on housing and sometimes shared beds when somebody had a space for the week. I stuck with it for the better part of a year until I found something more workable. The point I'm trying to make is not so much that sex work was a good thing or a bad thing or the right choice or the wrong choice. When it came time to make that choice, God was already there in the networks of care that were present when I started. Queer family gave me a taste of what I would later call the hope for the kingdom of heaven and a preview of what I would look for in church family. When I was not able to lie down and sleep in safety, God showed up for me in the care of my companions and showed up through me in my care for them. We all had our own things going on, our own bills to pay, our own drama, and our own grievances with one another. But we knew that we could reach out. No matter how much or how little we had that week, we recognized that we could be safety for one another, a safety that we could lie down and sleep peacefully within, even if just for that night. I think of the work that we do as a church and how we are and can be the light of God's face, shining on those who are waiting to see some good. I think of the smiles and sometimes the tears of the street kids on Shattuck as Bree and I hand them a bagged lunch for second Sunday sandwiches. I think of all of my friends that have just had their livelihoods upended, needing those networks of care and that room to be heard in distress now more than ever. What does it look like to be something that folks in need will recognize as a sanctuary, as a refuge? As a church, as our own network of care, I believe that we are called to link arms with other networks of care, to remember when God gave us that room in distress and offer it to others when we can. Who knows what could happen? You'd be amazed how healing one night of safe rest can be.